and get started. It looks like the majority of people who signed up are on. So hi everyone. Thank you all so much for being here for the second Intuitive You webinar call. And just a reminder, if anyone missed it that I said in the beginning, this is recorded. So feel free to keep your video features turned off, as well as keeping yourselves muted. And if you have any questions, feel free to utilize the chat feature. I'll be keeping an eye on that. So any questions, send them our way. But I'd like to start by introducing Erin, who is my meditation coach. And I'm so grateful that you're here. I could just like cry. This was so amazing. But I've been working with Erin since April of 2016. You were talking about earlier. It's just
crazy that it's been that.
So crazy. Yes, it's been so amazing. And Erin taught me everything I know about meditation, which is a lot. Erin is a wealth of knowledge, and she has so much just amazing information to share. So I'm just really excited to have her here. And I met Erin at a time where on the last webinar I was explaining I was working a high demanding job in a busy city. Meditation, mindfulness, breath work, none of it was a priority of mine. And just the idea of taking time out of my super busy, important day to sit down and meditate was just, I couldn't even fathom it. And it was thanks to Erin that I was able to implement a daily practice that inevitably changed my life. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Erin and have her, just give her story, share a little bit about who she is and how, Erin, how did you find meditation?
I'm so honored to be here, Nicolette. Thank you so much for inviting me, for even creating these webinars. It's so amazing to get the word out and to share your story and to use this forum to touch so many people's lives. So I'm just really honored to be here, and it's really just such a joy for me to participate. So thank you. Just to share a little bit about my story, I was in a similar place. I was working 80 hours a week at The Economist in New York City in marketing strategy and business intelligence. Prior to that, I was at Forbes and an investment bank before that, and moved to the city right after graduating from Penn. So was really excited about the lifestyle, just, the whole stress thing was kind of like an exciting piece, and I was sort of drawn to the energy. But I was feeling into how I wanted to share this today while I was meditating before this session. And what I want to highlight about the story and what really drew me to meditation was really desiring to find an organic, self-contained way to move through circumstances that we all encounter that tend to trigger stress or a heaviness or a feeling of overwhelm. And I encountered several of those in my 20s in New York, first of which was 9/11. I was living really close to the World Trade Center in Tribeca. And that kind of sent me into a mild depression. And there were a few other things throughout my 20s, the stress of 80-hour work weeks, just relationships, just various things that would sort of trigger that sense of overwhelm. And I would go into therapy or even think about going on medication to help myself move through it. Right. And it got to a point in my early 30s where I really desired to find an organic way that was self-contained to help me move through those circumstances.
I love that self-contained piece.
Yeah, something organic that I could find within myself to help to soothe the heaviness or the stress or the emotions that were coming up that were creating a sense of sort of depression or anxiety.
Right.
And you and I were talking a lot before the session tonight about this work being so applicable to people like us who are type A, who are constantly like on and striving for perfection and really just like constantly spinning because our minds are really active.
Yeah.
And that's really when I sort of, I wouldn't say surrendered, but I had done a lot of yoga and I found an information session on meditation and thought to myself, I just need to kind of let go, get out of my way and just try something new and see if this is something that can help me get a better understanding of what's going on in my mind and find that ability to cope with these circumstances that we all encounter, or to soothe the sensation of the crazy thoughts or the heavier emotions that come up when we move through the ups and downs that are inherent in life.
Right. And I'm
So
sure,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sure every single person on here has felt stress, anxiety, some level of depression at some point. And when those feelings and those emotions are so heightened or come to such an intense point in our lives where maybe you feel stuck, maybe you feel hopeless, maybe you feel you don't even know how to get yourself out of it. And then having something that you, as you said, is something that is organic, that you have the power to sort of turn back to step into, right?
Exactly.
It's amazing.
Exactly. And I think also just a tool or a technique to help you sort of have awareness of what's really at the root of that heavier emotion or that sort of thought pattern that happens that causes that sensation. And I think therapy, sometimes you go and you talk over and over and you just kind of get attached to the thought or a spinning on the thought, even more so, and without getting to the root of it. And so there was just sort of this desire to kind of surrender and get out of my own way and do whatever I needed to do around the work and being consistent with it to find a solution. Because I really desired to feel better.
Right.
And finding it, taking an 8-week course in New York City with a practitioner, it just started to change everything. The consistency, sitting in the practice, accessing that place of rest, started to allow me to reframe my approach to the heaviness of those thoughts or some of the heavier emotions. It taught me how to look at it from a bit of a distance and not attach to it so much.
Just so powerful.
And we were talking before, it's really the consistency that's the key with it.
Yes.
It becomes like this practice, this respite, this place of rest that you go to every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes, to help you sort of reframe the way you approach that and rest your mind.
Right.
Which we don't really do very often.
Right. Some people never do it. They don't allow themselves even 5 minutes to rest the mind. But we both understand that. I mean, like I said, when I first started working with Erin, I couldn't fathom giving myself 5 minutes to sit.
Exactly how I was. I would do it in yoga and I would be in Shavasana and I could do it for maybe 3 minutes. And then I thought, how am I ever going to maintain that in a practice off the yoga mat? But I got to a point where I just desired to have something that could help me reframe my approach and to soothe that feeling, that I was willing to just explore it. And that curiosity to just allow ended up changing my whole life.
Right. So I think this is a beautiful segue into sort of asking you as a meditation coach and as someone who taught me, because I'm sure there's people on here that are maybe at that point. They're maybe at that point that where they can't really understand or fathom how they can sit with meditation. And so where to start? If someone's just starting their practice, they're brand new to meditation, where would you suggest someone start? And what would you want them to know? Someone who's just beginning their meditation journey.
Perfect. The first thing I would say is that dispelling the myth around it being around forcing your mind to be silent. And that it's really harder. And sort of shifting the paradigm around it and explaining that it's really actually rest. It's a place of respite. It's a place to sort of, how we could go have a drink or we could go watch a movie or read a book to kind of escape what's going on. It's actually an opportunity to have a rest. It's a resting state.
Right.
And so you open your mind to it and let go of that idea that it's forcing the mind to be quiet, because it's really not what it is. It's a state. And to use the breath. The breath is the place I would start. And that's what we're going to do today at the end of the webinar. I'm going to take you through a short breathing exercise and a very short guided meditation to give you a taste of what it feels like.
Right.
realize that it's not something that you have to do by yourself around just sitting there and trying to block the thoughts out and forcing anything. Because I think that's what a lot of people, and that's how I felt when I initially encountered it, that it was going to be really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So shifting that around and saying, it's really about the breath. And the breath is as natural and easy as the waves crashing against the shore. It just is. It is. It's something that we have within us, that if we learn how to approach the breath in a different way, we have this capacity to calm our minds, calm our autonomic nervous system, and access the place of rest.
Right.
And there are tools and techniques that are super simple
Mm-hmm.
and require only 5 minutes to help you access that state of rest.
Right.
It's not forced at all.
Right. And we were talking also about time.
Yes.
Right? And reframing how we think about time and our time. And how Erin and I completely understand that it might not seem very practical to invest time doing nothing, right?
Because we're always doing.
Because we're always doing, right? We need to be working out or reading or, answering emails or on Instagram and just constantly doing, engaging, connecting. And it's exhausting. And the mind's actually craving this. And there's actually science and data, right, to back this up. And this is what I was so excited to have Erin on here for, to share some of the scientific facts around meditation and how it's so beneficial.
Excellent. I'm so excited to share this because I work with
Erin and I, our type A brains love the facts.
I work with almost all of my private clients who are type A, really successful professionals.
Yeah, you work with a lot of CEOs, right?
Executives, yeah.
Executives, yeah.
And have these crazy to-do lists. So it's that whole idea of how I don't have time to do this because I have all these things to do, right?
Right.
But the thing with this is it really isn't a huge investment of time. You can receive benefit in as little as 5 to 10 minutes a day. And investing that 5 or 10 minutes a day in actually resting your mind and your nervous system is actually going to allow you to be much more focused when you go back to that active state of doing. And it's going to make things happen much more efficiently. And I'm sorry, but no one is that busy that they can't create 5 to 10 minutes of space in the morning.
Right.
Especially if your desire to start feeling better is strong. And it becomes that space in life, right, where I desire to feel better. So I'm willing to make a little bit of a trade-off and get up 5 or 10 minutes earlier.
Right.
And that's really all it requires.
Right. Or the desire could be to be a better functioning human throughout your day.
Exactly. And I think this is a perfect place to bring in the connection between the mind and the body and talk a little bit about the science.
Yeah.
Truly speaking, it's investing 5 to 10 minutes a day in using the breath to access a place of rest, and then our whole autonomic nervous system starts to calm down. There are 2 parts to that nervous system. There's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and the sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight. So when we're in a state of stress or we're worried or we're in anxiety and fear, the sympathetic response is triggered.
Mm-hmm.
Our heart rate increases, cortisol is released, adrenaline is released, so the body is in a state of like holding and constriction.
Right.
There's another part of that autonomic nervous system that's called the parasympathetic that's responsible for bringing down the heart rate, deeper breath, letting go of tension, hormonal balance, all of that. And so when that is triggered, that parasympathetic response, and the sympathetic comes down, we notice that the heart rate slows, heart rate variability comes down, the breath becomes more deep, and we are able to let go of the holding. The body starts to feel some relief. It starts to feel better. And the science also shows that as that autonomic nervous system comes into balance and that parasympathetic response is heightened, the actual structure of the brain starts to shift.
Wow.
The is the portion that's responsible for the fight or flight. And when we're constantly in that to-do list over and over again in that state of stress, thinking we never have enough time to get everything done, or we're in a state of anxiety, the science shows shows that the amygdala gets larger over time. When we start to establish a consistent practice using the breath to access a place of rest, and this parasympathetic response is heightened, over time, they say in as little as 8 weeks, the science shows that the amygdala starts to shrink.
Wow.
The structure of the brain starts to shift, and the prefrontal cortex, increased blood flow goes there, which that's the part that's responsible for decision making and focus and concentration and moving things forward. We become more efficient, and they measure that blood flow starts to go there in an increased way over time with the practice.
Mm.
So it's this idea that, if you have this desire to start feeling better and you invest as little as 5 or 10 minutes a day in a practice, not only are you going to feel better mentally, but your body is going to have a increased capacity to heal and to go into a restorative mode versus that constricted fight or flight.
Right. And you would say then that it's the consistency with the practice, right, that helps to make that your new state of being, essentially.
Exactly, because it's just like working out the body. And we talked about this right before.
Right.
It's like working out the body. You're not going to lose weight or increase your muscle mass if you're not doing your workout consistently.
Right.
You can't do it for one day and
Right.
then to do it another day and expect to see a result. It's the same
Right.
with it. It's training the mind, having consistency to access that place of rest, that parasympathetic response. Over time, the mind, the brain is actually going to shift. The structure of it's going to shift.
Right.
And you're going to notice the benefit. So the consistency is key. And the best way I describe this to clients is sort of equating the practice to medicine. And I often go back to the root word of it. It's meditation. The root word is mediri, which is Latin for healing. It's the same root word of medicine.
Wow.
So as we practice, with consistency,
Sorry, Erin, 1 second. The sun is like glaring in. You keep talking.
practice with consistency, it becomes like a replacement for a pill that we're taking. But it also allows us, like I said at the beginning, to find this self-contained, organic medicine that we can bring into our mind and our body every single day and receive benefit without having to rely on something external to ourselves that's a chemical that we don't really know what the side effects are going to be or what the long-term implications are going to be.
Right.
So going back to like a tool, a coping mechanism, a way to soothe ourselves to start to feel better.
Wow. I never realized that, the root of the word. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think it is too, because I just think this has such a huge capacity to help us heal.
Yeah, it does. And I've experienced it firsthand. I know you have. And it's really just incredible once you start doing this work and committing to it. The results are, I mean, it's the truth. They're there. And it's funny, I was asking Erin when we were preparing for this webinar, I was like, what do we say to people? Like, how do we tell people to be consistent? And how do we tell people to commit to a daily practice? And Erin put it so simply. It was, you start to feel good. You start to feel better. You start to see a difference in your everyday life. You start to get, my experience was I got very clear on what my purpose was, what my passion, what I'm supposed to be doing in this lifetime. These are big things, right? And you almost get kind of like addicted to it in a way. You want to meditate. And it's funny, the days, or even there's been sometimes like a week where I don't meditate because I'm human and things happen. And I notice a difference. I can feel when I'm not doing my practice. So as soon as you start to build this consistency and you start to commit to this, little by little, it's going to grow. And Erin, what do you always say? It's every time you meditate, you're investing.
Precisely. It's like a deposit in a bank account.
Right.
Time, you're gonna receive. in exchange for that. And in the beginning, and we talked a lot about this before this, and I think this is really important to focus on. In the beginning, it's important to create sort of a ritual or an experience around the practice that's really appealing to you, to help you look forward to it.
Yeah.
Even if you're not looking forward to it in the begining, being honest with yourself and being like, oh my gosh, this is
I will be very honest. I hated it in the beginning.
I did too.
I hated it.
I really wanted to feel better. So I'm like, whatever, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give this a go.
Anxious. It was funny. My anxiety, Erin, I don't know if you remember this. My anxiety was so bad that meditating made me anxious. Like I was stressed out over meditating, like, which is ridiculous. But
absolutely. So many of my clients are like that. And I was like that too. And there's fear. There's a little bit of fear of like, what is it going to be like? What am I going to find if I get that quiet with myself?
Right.
What am I going to see? What am I going to experience? It's the unknown.
So
that's going to come up. It's going to be that way in the beginning. It's like anything.
Right.
And they say 21 days to create a new habit. So in the beginning, it's really about creating a really lovely ritual or something that you look forward to help you have this practice. And then all of a sudden there becomes this inflection point where, like Nicolette said, it changes from that to something that you actually really, you experience joy and peace and bliss, and you start to look forward to it.
Yeah.
And then there's another layer where, like Nicolette said, if you're missing it because life happens, and we don't beat ourselves up when that happens, but you don't do it and you miss it, especially for a period of consecutive days, you start to notice that you feel differently and you show up differently in your waking moments. You might be a little bit more irritable or reactive versus how you feel when you're practicing with consistency.
Right. And
so at the beginning, it's like anything else, like working out or anything. At the beginning, it's kind of like, ugh, I don't want to do this.
Right.
I can't like that. But it's creating a ritual that you enjoy. And then over time,
to it
changes.
Yes. And I think in the beginning, it's important to know, like, start small, right? It's always about, and I think most health coaches, I mean, even in my health coach training, they talked about this, or fitness instructors, personal trainers, you start small, right? Like you don't need to dive into a 30-minute meditation, like by any means.
Precisely. And that's sort of the way I design my program, is to start small, right? To start small and to do it in a way where it's super guided and super supported. So you never feel like you have to force your mind or you're on your own, right? It's starting small, starting with a shorter exercise. So over time you build. You build. Each week you go deeper.
Exactly.
As it becomes more amenable to accessing that place of rest.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's kind of like, I always talk about this in the work too, just kind of like a puppy. The mind, it's so powerful and it has so much energy going on, especially when we're spinning, and especially for type A's that are really bright. There's so much activity. So it becomes kind of like a puppy, training a puppy. Every day, it's like reinforcement, bringing it back, bringing it back, a little bit longer, and then ultimately there's a shift. And the mind starts to adjust, starts to shift, and the scans and the science are now substantiating that. So it's really amazing.
It's so amazing. And so when someone's first starting to meditate, where would you recommend that they meditate, and like what time of day? Is there a certain, I mean, I know for me, and when you and I first started working together, it was always the morning time. I always woke up and it was kind of the first thing I did after brushing my teeth, essentially. And is that what you would sort of recommend for most people?
Definitely. And the reason for that is because it's easiest for your mind to access a place of rest when you're just getting out of bed, because you've been in a very rested state while you're sleeping.
And bonus points if you don't look at your phone beforehand. I have yet to make that a consistent part of my practice. It's a goal of mine for the remainder of the year, is to get into a habit of not checking Instagram or emails or text messages and going right into my morning meditation. But to your point, Erin, when you're already in that sort of restful state, it's
exactly
a beautiful time.
Geek out a little bit with the science, is that the reason is because when we're sleeping, we're in a delta frequency, the brain waves.
Yes.
We measure brain waves, they're super slow, right? In delta. And
Mm-hmm.
when we're in our waking state, when we're checking email, and you and I are talking right now, or we're sort of in our lives, we're in beta, which is much faster. And what the science shows is that when we meditate, when we access that place of rest, we actually access theta and alpha frequencies, which are faster than delta, but slower than beta. And in those frequencies, that's where the mind starts to rest, starts to open, clarity starts to come, focus and concentration are enhanced, the autonomic nervous system can let go, all of these benefits we talked about. So it makes sense that it's a bit easier to access those frequencies if we are just coming out of delta versus coming from a much faster speed and coming down.
Right.
So we recommend doing it first thing in the morning, right after you brush your teeth, and finding a place in your home that's really joyful for you.
Yes.
That you really look forward to being when you're maybe close to a window, or just a place in your home that you really enjoy spending time. That feels very natural.
And I love that. I think having maybe a little corner, I mean, I remember in the beginning, like I always had a certain blanket I would use. I mean, I always just sat on my bed because when we first started working together, I was probably living, I don't know if I was living with both Paige and Maggie, or I was probably living with multiple people in these small New York City apartments, and my little bedroom would always be my little sanctuary. But even if you don't have much space to work with, that's okay. You don't need I see some people on Instagram with like, here's my meditation corner. It's like, that's beautiful. But if you don't have that, that's okay. So even if it's just one blanket, or having one crystal or an essential oil, or maybe your journal, anything to kind of sort of enhance and ritualize the experience is so, so, so beautiful. And make it so enjoyable. We actually had a question, Erin, that has come through. So they're asking, so they're afraid that they won't be able to be consistent given their hectic schedule and what they have going on. So that has kept them away from meditating because they know and they feel that they won't be able to do it every single day. So that being said, would you suggest it's better to just do it randomly and whenever and wherever you can? Like if that's how it has to start? Absolutely.
And this is a perfect way to bring in, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the investment. Yeah. Erin and I get very excited when we.
I know, we do. We can go on and on. So. But this goes to the point we were talking about right before we got on the webinar around perfection. Everything has to be perfect and totally in line, and like at the same time every day. And if we don't do it that way, we might as well not do it at all. So going to that.
That's probably how I felt in the beginning.
So the answer to this question is you absolutely can bring it into your life in creative ways. And if it's every second day or third day, that's great as a starting point, because it is like an investment, right? And anytime you do it, you're going to trigger that autonomic nervous system response of the parasympathetic being heightened. So your body is going to experience a rest. So I would say let go of that being an obstacle and bring it in creative ways, in a way that is going to work with your daily schedule. And enjoy, and just to hone in on that a little bit more, just really letting go of the perfect, because the definition of all this is so opposite of the way, we are, like the way I'm built, the way Nicolette is built, and type A personalities.
Yes.
Letting go. Letting go, not trying to like force anything or control anything. It's letting go, but it's really letting go of attachment, right? And the need to be perfect or to have things be a certain way. It's the opposite of that. It's letting go and sort of allowing and embracing what starts to show up, right? It's moving away from it needing to be this perfect, rigid, set thing.
And expecting that it's going to be, like you said, the same time, place, way every single day. I don't think for anybody's lives is realistic. Obviously, things are always going to pop up. We're always going to have curveballs and all these different things. And there's going to be days where, I have some days where I'm meditating and it's really easy for me to sort of surrender, let go, and allow. But then I have other days where the only thing going through my mind is my to-do list, like on repeat. And then I go down all these different rabbit holes, and that's okay too, right? It's just flexible and gentle with yourself and
Right.
with the
Yes.
practice.
Going back to the definition, it's just, awareness of our thoughts, our emotions, and our physical body in the present moment, but it's without judgment.
Without judgment.
Without judgment, because the essence of this is to find that place within ourselves where we can have compassion for who we are and allow ourselves to rest,
Right.
which we don't know how to do in the way that society runs anymore. And that's why I think we're reaching a point with the larger consciousness where it's becoming more and more imperative to bring in different forms of coping mechanisms, because it's too much.
It's too
And
much.
I have so many clients that are traveling all the time that, do it on the plane or do it in the car or find creative ways to just bring it in so that they're able to tap into that state of rest.
Right. And I also think it's okay when you first start meditating, like figuring out what works for you and what doesn't. So I remember for me, Erin, I don't know if you remember this, but in the beginning, I was dealing with so much anxiety that meditating at night for me was really difficult. Remember? So just knowing that you might come across situations or ways in which to meditate that don't feel right for you, and that's okay. And to
Absolutely.
really
When I
flexible.
learned it, I was doing the 8-week program and I was taught to do it twice a day, in the morning and in the evening, with consistency for 20 minutes. But I, at the time, was living with my ex-fiance, and it was just impossible in the evening sometimes to create the space to do that without being interrupted. And so I just,
Right.
when I wasn't able to do it in the evening, I would just do it in the morning, and I would just do the best I could.
Yeah.
That's the other thing is doing the best you can,
Right.
and letting go of that need to be perfect, letting go of the judgment, and just being open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So true. So true. So now let's sort of play out the scenario of someone starts to meditate, they start to implement maybe a 3 to 5 minute practice every day, and they're sort of feeling like they can create more space and more time. How do you recommend someone build their practice once they sort of lay down that initial foundation?
I would say it's really just a matter of bringing in a longer exercise at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, and just getting up a little bit earlier and extending it.
Yeah.
Or there are some tools where you can bring in a meditation of motion. So doing it, as you're walking or moving throughout your day. I know it sounds weird, but there are several tools you can bring in to even do. I used to do it on the subway coming from my office back to my
Really?
apartment, to kind of let go of the day, and you can do it with your eyes open. So just opening up to different tools that could be introduced to help you add time, and so increasing that investment.
Right, right. We actually just got, and someone was commenting that they found we're naturally like uneasy and conditioned to question everything, which is one of the initial hurdles you have to overcome. Getting rid of the scatterbrain is part of the muscle you're developing, which is true.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
This is a great point.
great
And
point.
it's that resistance. It's that resistance. And I think that's a huge piece that I was working through when I first came to this work. And that's what I meant by the word sort of surrendering to it, and being in a place where I desired the the healing or the feeling better more than I was skeptical. Because I had encountered the word throughout my 20s in New York. Everyone telling me, you're so intense, you need to meditate to find that balance, or to find that peace. And I, because of that reason, thought it was out there, right? I thought it was just like another form of yoga, or that it required me to, just, I don't know, let go of the
Right.
pragmatic grounded pieces. And
Mm-hmm.
I had that sort of myth around it for a long time. And that's part of it. That's part of it. In my experience, the only way to quell that, or to let go of the resistance, is to open up and practice it, and then let the benefit, let the experience start to become your proof. And to help with that, bringing in some of the data, some of the science that has been, there for a while now, and it's becoming more and more, rich as of late, to show us that there are numbers and there are studies that support the efficacy of this. And it's really, at the end of the day, it is not woo-woo. It's not religious. It has nothing to do with that at the end of the day. It really is a science and a practice. And the results can be verified more and more by science and study.
Right. And I think that resistance, which we talked about prior to this evening, is a huge piece. And to the point of just overcoming that reality that the mind chatter is going to be there, and just knowing that thoughts will naturally come in, right?
Exactly. And
Not
it's
allow that to feed into the fear, the resistance to the practice.
precisely. And with the practice itself, the more guided tools and techniques actually allow you to start to witness that chatter, that resistance, and that spinning from a distance, so you can really see what the mind does, especially when it's a little bit fearful of something. You just, you can really see those thoughts really coming like crazy. Right. And it's a matter of learning how, going back to the breath, what we talked about, like, how do we start? What's the easiest way to access this? It's through the breath, using the breath to start to let go of attaching so much to those resistant thoughts or that chatter. Right. Just to let it be there, so it doesn't have such a hold over you.
And I also think it's important to note, like, I've been working with Erin for over 3 years, and I still sometimes have such a resistance to the practice, right? I mean, it's just similar to, like we were saying, working out. I mean, there's days you just don't feel like going to the gym. Like that's life. And there's days I just don't feel like meditating. I still have so much resistance sometimes. And I mean, I was even listening to a podcast recently of my Reiki master was talking about this as well. Like, and she's someone who devotes her life to meditation and teaching meditation. And Erin, I know you're in the same boat. I mean, it's human. We're human. We're going to, resistance is going to come up, right? And it's just, I think, remembering the joy that you can feel from the practice, and sort of that sense of peace and clarity, and just like after a really good workout, how you can feel really, really good. So when you're resistant, you remember how good it feels to work out. So that kind of gets you to the gym. Once you start meditating, you start feeling that joy and that sense of peace, and you feel the mind chatter kind of calming down, and you get over those initial hurdles. It gets easier and easier to sort of remember that feeling and fight through the resistance, so to speak. Absolutely. But it's normal for that to come up.
Exactly. And just that whole concept we bring in often to our sessions, this is 80-20 rule, right? Nothing is perfect.
Yeah.
Nothing is perfect. And it's a matter of, just like when you're eating well, you want to eat really clean and healthy, or you want to work out. 80% of the time, you're showing up, you're doing what you need to do. And that 20% of the time, you're human. And you may not do it every day. You may skip a few days. You may go on vacation and not get to it at all. And going back to what we really wanted to highlight tonight, that's never going backward.
Yes,
never
exactly.
losing the momentum and the healing and the shifts that have happened in the mind-body connection by going off for a little while. It's a matter of anything else, just bringing yourself back.
Yes.
The next day or that next week when you return, gently bringing yourself back.
Yes.
To the point too, the energy is the key too. Like, it builds. When you have a place in your house that you love, that you dedicate to this, you feel that sense of peace and bliss, and you do it over and over again. The energy builds, and there's a shift that starts to happen in the chemistry in the body, and the data really substantiates that. The actual, matter in the brain starts to shift. The structures start to shift.
Right, which is so amazing.
It is.
Incredible. It is. Yeah, that's so cool. And what would you, just to sort of talk about other elements that you can bring into the practice, or maybe places people can find, because I know there's apps out there, and Erin has a beautiful 8-week program that she takes people through, which is another resource, but just sort of giving people elements to consider, first of all, like journaling or anything like that that they can bring into their practice, as well as resources.
Yes, I think that's all really wonderful. And I think like the Calm app, there are several apps that you can bring in that offer shorter meditations that are, it's all in one place. And maybe even going to more yoga classes and exploring restorative yoga.
Yes, yin yoga.
Bringing movement in, which is something we talked about recently too, is bringing movement in. And then, in some of the restorative and the yin classes, there's more space for stillness and to use the breath to just sort of sit and be. So I would say that's a great sort of bridge to get, deeper with the meditation or more open to it, is using the yoga piece of it, those restorative classes, and journaling too, journaling for sure. And I would say also just spending time outside, connecting to nature and moving your body in a really organic, open way, connecting to the natural rhythms. And especially right now with the change of seasons, it's an exciting time to sort of take a step back and just observe the natural rhythms and the changes that are happening, and this awareness that we're part of that.
Right.
So, to the earth, which isn't so easy if you're in New York or a city. And I think it was part of, why it's easier for Nicolette and I to remember lifestyle out in California, because you have more access to that.
Right.
But even going to Central Park or watching a sunset, or just, using the breath and being outside and connecting to nature, I think is a great way to open to this.
Right. Sort of just being open to being creative.
Yes, and just being open to taking a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
Every day.
Taking a little bit of a break every day.
allowing us to just take a pause in the middle of the craziness and the hectic schedules that we.
Yeah,
and that to-do list is always going to be there.
I was just going to say that, Erin, remembering that the emails are going to be there.
And that's the thing, we always say we're not able to relax until it's all done and we have nothing left on the to-do list, but that's so silly, because the next day there's going to be a whole other list of things to do. Right. So if you live in that way and that mindset, you're going to miss that opportunity to rest. And over time, your body is going to start to feel that, because you're not accessing that parasympathetic response. You're more in that sympathetic, that fight or flight. And over time, if that's a consistent thing, our bodies are not wired for it to be an everyday thing. Right. They're wired for it to be there when we really need it, when we're really in a situation where fear is necessary, like being chased by, an animal or something. Yeah. We're not meant to be in that state every single day. So if you're waiting for that rest and continuing in that sympathetic response over and over again, I really believe and have seen with my work over and over again that the body's going to begin to speak to you. Right. And it's going to be able to ask you, please take a rest. And this is sort of an idea to be preventative. Using it as the medicine I talked about, the practice being the medicine, preventative medicine. So we can allow the body to access that state of rest so that it's at peace and it's in balance and it's harmonious and it doesn't need to yell at us to take a rest. Right. Doesn't have to reach its breaking point. Exactly. Yes. So Erin, someone's asking you, what are some of the major changes in life that you personally witnessed after meditating consistently? And Erin, I think the sun's set where you are. It's pretty dark. Do you have a light? I don't right now. In my office with the electrical thing that's happening. The electrical thing, that's right. Okay. Office is in that other room. No worries. This is a great question. I wanted to bring this in because this is actually how Nicolette and I met, through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, that program. So one of the biggest changes I noticed was losing almost 40 pounds. So that was one of the biggest sort of touch points of evidence for me, that this was changing something in my body by me accessing this place of rest. Because in my 20s, I was always, really rigid about what I was eating, trying to lose all this weight and being so sort of just structured about it. Right? And it wasn't until I found this work that the weight just started to naturally come off. Wow, Erin, I never knew that. And that to me is probably this piece of evidence that a huge shift happened and sort of really triggered this immense curiosity to learn more about the mind-body connection, which led me to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and Ayurvedic medicine to learn, how important it is what we're putting in our body, and also how our state of mind affects the body chemistry. The other thing was, allowing me to realize that New York wasn't really the place for me. It was just too intense, or too many people, and it was too loud, and I didn't have enough access to nature. So it allowed me to have the clarity that I needed to make a change and move to California. And so The Economist sponsored me doing that. I worked from here for them remotely, but it really helped me receive clarity around changing my geographic location. And then as I got deeper with it, working with a coach after my meditation teacher helped me found this business and realized what I wanted to do. So I would say those three things are some of the biggest changes that I've experienced.
That's so amazing.
And I always say, if you had asked me, I guess it was now 7 years ago, that I found this work at 32 in New York, that I would be doing this, I would say, you're nuts. I would never else you envision my life changing this much.
Wow. It's so incredible.
And like you too, Nicolette, like everything changed with your mood and what you're doing with your life and everything.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Well, I think that's a really actually beautiful segue into the guided meditation portion.
Perfect.
So everyone, I'm so grateful that Erin's actually going to share a 10-minute meditation with us. And if I don't know, I think some people may have called in. So if you're driving, obviously you can keep it on and listen, but don't relax too much. Stay focused on the road, please. But if you're in a space where you're able to sort of relax and get comfortable and kind of shift gears to join in on this meditation,